Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel W3 Runs. In this tutorial, we are deep dive into CSS measurement units. If you are getting started with CSS or want to finally clear the confusion around all of these units, you are in the right place. In this tutorial, we are deep dive into CSS measurement units, one of the most essential blocks for the responsive and scalable web design. Whether you are building a personal portfolio or a landing page, or just improving your front-end skill, understanding these units is a game changer for writing clean, consistent, and responsive CSS. In this tutorial, you will learn the difference between absolute and relative units, when to use EM versus REM, and why it's matter, how VH, WV, percentage, and FR units help to create modern layouts. Also real-world examples that help you to build responsive design with confidence. These are the units we are going to learn in this tutorial, such as pixel, percentage, EM, REM, VW, such as viewport width, VH, viewport height, Vmax, viewport maximum, Vmin, viewport minimum. I know you are already familiar with some units such as pixel, percentage, EM, REM, etc. But without these, we have some other type of units. As I told you earlier, we are going to divide units into two parts. First one is absolute unit, where I'm going to cover centimeter value, millimeter, inches, pixel, points, and picus. Absolute units are fixed units, and most of the time we prefer to use pixel unit. Also, we have relative units such as EM, REM, CH, EX, VW, VH, Vmax, Vmin, and percentage. These relative units are depend on other parent object. So one by one, we will explore all of the units in this tutorial. So if you are not subscribed the channel, don't forget to subscribe the channel. And before I start our practical, let me introduce you something. If you want to learn CSS from the very beginning and organized way, then this course is for you. You can check out this course on Udemy. It's come with more than a 31-hour plus on-demand video and 202 downloadable resources. And you have full-time access. And after complete it, also you can get certificate. And also it come with 30-day money-back guarantee. And as I told you, it is the most complete course about CSS. So let's start the practical. As you can see, side by side I open my Visual Studio Code editor and my browser using live server extension, and I already created an HTML document named index.html. And in this HTML document, inside the body tag, we have a heading tag. And here I type CSS units. Then inside the body tag, we have a div tag with ID named box. Then I style this body section. First I assign a font family Arial Helvetica. And also I style this box using its ID name. First I provide a border, a solid border with 2 pixels. Then I provide a background color. Also I provide width and height. Width 600 pixels and height 300 pixels. Here we use absolute unit, and pixel is a fixed absolute unit. Now the question is, what that means? What is the meaning of fixed width? If I reduce the browser width, as you can see, our shape doesn't change according to browser width. You can see the scroll bar below the browser. If I move the scroll bar right side, you can see the complete rectangle shape. It is a fixed unit, so it's not going to change the height and width according to the browser height and width. That's why we call it absolute unit. So let's back to the previous position of this browser. And now I'm going to use a relative value. So I'm going to use percentage value. So here I'm going to type 100% with 100%. And I'm going to set this file. After set this file, as you can see, here you can see our box take 100% width of this browser. If I extend the browser size, as you can see, according to the browser width, it increases the width. Similarly, if I reduce the browser width, now you can see it's also reduced the box width according to the browser. It means it's going to take 100% of browser width. Similarly, if I pass 50% here,
and then set this file. Now you can see it's take 50% of browser width. So this is the example of relative unit. This kind of value depend on parent div element, otherwise window. Now the question is how it's work with parent div. Let me show you an example. So inside this box, I'm going to take another div element, div, and also I'm going to assign an ID box. And I want to move our old box div inside this div. So I'm going to change this div ID name, box1. Now, box1 is our parent div and box is child div. So I'm going to style this div. So copy the ID name and here I'm going to type hashtag our ID name, box1. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to use similarly these properties. So I copy this CSS properties and I'm going to paste inside this box1. First, I'm going to change the background color. I don't want any background color. And then I want to assign an absolute width to this div. So I'm going to assign 600 pixel and height 300 pixel. If I set this file, now you can see our child div element take 50% width of this parent container. So as I told you, relative value work relatively according to the parent size. So if I reduce the otherwise increase the browser height and width, it's not going to affect to our box because we set absolute value to its parents. So let me show you. So I'm going to reduce the browser width. So after reduce the browser width, as you can see, here you can see we have a scroll bar, but our box do not change the width. Similarly, if I increase the browser width, also you can see the same result because now it's work according to parent container. But if I remove the parent container, then this box going to change its width. But if I remove the parent div, means box1, then it's going to change the shape according to the browser window. Then it's going to take 50% width of browser window. Here we use 50% value. It means it's going to take 300 pixel because we set box1 width 600 pixel. Similarly, if I pass 20% and then set this file, now you can see, now it's take 20% of 600 pixel. But if I remove the box1, let me show you, and then set this file, now the window become parent to this div. Window means the body tag. And now I'm going to talk about EM and REM value. EM and REM units basically work with font size. Let me show you how. So at first, I'm going to increase the width. I'm going to take 80%. Then, here I'm going to take a property named font size. Font size. Font size 1 EM. And inside this div tag, here I'm going to add a dummy paragraph. Here I'm going to type lorem 100. And I'm going to set this file. So here we add dummy paragraph of 100 words. And we set font size 1 EM. 1 EM value work relatively because it's a relative unit. And the parent of box is body. And as you can see, in our body tag, we do not use any font size. So let's use font size. Font size, and I'm going to use font size 13 pixel. And I'm going to set this file. After set this file, now you can see inside the box our font size is reduced. Now 1 EM become 13 pixel. But if I use 2 EM, so I'm going to change the value 2 EM. Then I'm going to set this file. Now you can see it's look too big and it's also overflown to this container. It's mean here we use 2 times value of 13 pixel. Because in our parent tag, here we use 13 pixel font size. And 2 times of 13 pixel is 26 pixel. That's why our font become 26 pixel. Similarly, if you want to take half value of this parent div, in that case, just you need to pass 0.5 pixel, 0.5 EM. If I set this file, Now our fonts become too small because it's half the value. So our font size become 6 pixels. But if I comment out otherwise, remove this parent element font size, and here I use 1em value and set this file, now you can see it add a default value for this font. Now the question is, what is the default value of 1em? The default value of 1em is 16 pixels. If I show you my browser settings and then go to the appearance, you can see the font size. If I open this font size, now you can see by default it said 16 pixels. But if I increase the size, suppose I use 28 and back to my window, now you can see now our 1em font value become 28 pixels. Similarly, if I reduce the value, it becomes so small. Now 1em value become 9 pixels because here we said 9 pixels. So it's take the default value of browser font size, and most of the time browser use 16 pixels. And now let's talk about REM unit. So here I'm going to type REM and I'm going to save this file. REM stands for relative EN. It's pretty similar with EM, but it not work according to parent. Now you can see the default font size, which is 16 pixels. But if I assign font size to our body, so type font size and I'm going to assign 8 pixels. And if I save this file, as you can see, it do not reduce the font size. It do not work according to parent. This REM unit is related to root. If I increase the browser font size, let me show you appearance font size. So I'm going to use 28 pixel font size and then back to the window. Now you can see our one REM value become 28 pixel. So now let's fix the default value, which is 16 pixel. And if I use 2 REM, and as you know, it's going to take 32 pixels. And there is another way that we can manipulate the REM unit using the root tag. And as you know, our root tag is HTML tag. So if I style the HTML, so type HTML, then inside the curly braces, here I'm going to use font size property. Font size, and I'm going to set font size 10 pixel. This is the default value. And if I save this file, now you can see our font size become 20 pixel because here we use 2 REM. It's mean twice of root font size value. So if I use 1 REM and then set this file, now you can see our font size become 10 pixel because now our root tag font size is 10 pixel. And now I'm going to set EM unit to our width. So I'm going to take font size 1 EM and width 1 EM. If I save this file, it's going to take width 8 pixel. Also, it's going to take font 8 pixel. Let me show you. Because, as I told you, EM value work with according to the parent. So if I save this file, you can see the result. It take box width 8 pixel because here we set font size 8 pixel. Also, it take font size 8 pixel. So EM value take the font size of the parent and it apply the font size to the width of the child D. And at the similar way, if I use REM value, REM and save this file, now our font size become 10 pixel. Also our width become 10 pixel because it take root value. I hope now it's become so clear that why we use EM and REM value only with fonts, not the height and width. So this is the first part of this tutorial. At the next part of the tutorial, we are going to talk about VH and VW.
So this is the second part of this tutorial and we are going to start with viewport height and viewport width. So let's get started.
Here you can see a browser window on your screen and we call total width of browser width is viewport width and viewport width divided with total 100 part. If we use 50 VW, then it's going to take half of this browser. At the same way, we have viewport height. It is also divided with 100. And if we use 50 VH, then it's going to take 50% of this window. So let's start the practical and see how we can use it. So as you can see, we are in my Visual Studio Code editor, and I already created another HTML document named index2.html. So at first, I'm going to change the width unit. Here I'm going to use 100 VW, and for height, I'm going to use 100 VH. For now, I don't want font size, so I'm going to remove it. After save this file, as you can see, here you can see it completely occupies the browser height and browser width. But there is a problem. You can see the scroll bar right and bottom. It's a problem. So I'm going to remove the heading tag H1. Also, I'm going to set margin 0. And also I'm going to remove the border width 0 pixel. And I'm going to save this file. If I save this file, after save this file, you can see it removed the scroll bar from the window and it occupies completely height and width of this window. If I reduce the width, also you can see there is no scroll bar. And also this unit works for height. And now I'm going to reduce the unit value. For that, here I'm going to pass 50 VW. And for height, it remains as it is. After save this file, you can see the result. Now, the width becomes half of this browser window. As you know, these are all relative units. It's pretty similar with percentage. But there is the difference between percentage and viewport and view height. Percentage value work according to the parent element. If we set parent element width 600 pixel and then we use child element width 50%, then it's going to set width 300 pixel. But viewport width and viewport height not work like that. It's always work according to the window size. Let me show you. So I'm going to try to put it in a fixed width. So again, I'm going to take a parent container. Div, inside the div tag, I'm going to assign an ID. ID box 1. Then I'm going to move this div inside this parent div tag. And now I'm going to style the box 1. Hashtag box 1. And inside the curly braces, our first property is border. I'm going to use the same value with 2 pixel solid border. And then I'm going to set height and width with 600 pixel. Height 300 pixel. If I save this file, you can see the result. So in the parent tag, we use absolute value. And in the child tag, here we use relative value. But here we use viewport height and viewport width. And as I told you, viewport height and viewport width not work relatively to the parent container. It works relatively to the window size. So if I reduce the width of this browser, as you can see, it relatively works with the window, not the parent container. But if I use the percentage value here, so here I'm going to use 50%. And then save this file. Now you can see it takes 50% width of this parent container. So I hope now you realize what is the difference between viewport value and percentage value. Both the units are relative units, but their working method is different. Now let's talk about our last two units, Vmax and Vmin. Vmax stands for viewport maximum and Vmin stands for viewport minimum. So let's start the practical. But before we start the practical, I want to clear Vmax and Vmin unit. On your screen, you can see a browser window. And the browser window height is 300 pixel and the browser window width is 400 pixel. And here we create a div inside this browser window. And also we specify a width to this div element, which is 50 Vmax. It means it's going to take 50% value of browser width, which is 200 pixel. Now you might think it is pretty similar with percentage unit, otherwise VW unit. But it is not. Vmax unit always going to take maximum value of browser. Now the question is, what is the meaning of that? As you can see, our browser width is greater than browser height. So it's going to take browser width value. And 50 VMX of 400 pixel is 200 pixel. That's why it said div width 200 pixel. But what if I reduce the browser window width? Let me show you. At the next example, as you can see, here I reduce the browser width. Now our browser width become 250 pixel and browser height is 300 pixel. Now browser height is greater than browser width. So this time Vmax unit going to take this value, the height value, 300 pixel, and the half of 300 pixel is 150 pixel. So it's going to set the object width 150 pixel because Vmax unit always select the maximum value. And at the opposite way, Vmin unit work. So let's start the practical and clear the concept. So at first, I'm going to remove the parent div element, box 1. I don't need it. Then also I'm going to remove from the style section. And here I'm going to change the width value, 50 Vmax. And here I'm going to set this fine. Now the question is, what is the meaning of Vmax? And also I'm going to change the height to understand it better. So here I'm going to pass 50 VH. Vmax going to take the maximum width. It's going to check height and width both, and it's going to take the bigger width. I want to say it's going to compare the viewport height and viewport width, and it's chosen the bigger value. And according to the bigger value, it's going to set the width. Let me show you how. Here you can see our window height is bigger than window width. That's why it takes half of this value. And according to the half of this value, it set the width. Assume that our viewport width is 200 pixel, but our viewport height is 300 pixel. Then it's going to take 50 VMX value of this height, not the width. And our height is 300 pixel. So it's going to set width 150 pixel. That's why you can see here we use 50 VMX, but it do not take the 50% of the browser width. It takes 50% of the browser height. But what if we increase the browser width and make it bigger than browser height? Let me show you. Now I'm going to increase the browser width. Now you can see our browser width is bigger than browser height. So this time it's going to take the browser width value. And according to the browser width value, it takes 50 VMX, means half of the browser width. Now you can notice our container width occupy the 50% of browser width. But if I reduce the browser width, now it do not occupy the 50% of browser width because browser height is bigger than browser width. So now it set the width 50% of browser height. So this is the usage of Vmax unit. For responsive layout, it is very useful. And at the opposite, we have another unit, which is Vmin. So I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. Then I'm going to save this file and back to my browser. And now I'm going to change the unit name. 50 Vmin means viewport minimum, and I'm going to save this file again. Then I back to the browser. Now you can see the different result. This unit is completely opposite of Vmax unit. Now you can notice, you can see our browser width is shorter than browser height. That's why it's going to take browser width value. And according to the browser width value, it's going to set the box width. If the window width is 200 pixel, then it's going to set box width 100 pixel. Because here we use 50 of viewport area. But what if we increase the browser width? Let me show you. And now I'm going to increase the browser width. After increase the browser width, now you can see now the browser height is shorter than browser width. That's why it said width of this box 50% of browser height. If I reduce the browser height, as you can see, our box width become so small because now it's take 50% of this much height. If the height is 100 pixel, then it said this box with 50 pixels. So this is how Vmax and Vmin unit work. So this is it for this tutorial.
And if you are not subscribed the channel, don't forget to subscribe the channel. Share this video if you like it. Thanks for watching this video. See you soon.